Samuel Atkinson, Unit 22, Single Camera Technique. So single camera technique is a technique used in filmmaking industry, and it's done mainly with just one camera to take different shots in a scene, and those shots will be edited together later on with different techniques. The difference between multi-camera technique and single camera technique is with multi-camera technique you're using more than one camera. It can be two or more, and you're covering more space than what a single camera technique is being used. With single camera technique you're taking shots at different times, and then eventually after everything's done you'll edit it all together and it'll flow into a scene. With multi-camera technique everything's happening at the same time, and you have more than two cameras, so you'll be covering more space and it can create more of a flow than what single camera technique can make, because you have to go back and edit everything. As well, the actors can just act the scene normally with multi-camera technique. If you're doing it with single camera technique, then you'll have to go back and do the shots again to put it all together once you've started to want to edit it. This is a scene from 8 out of 10 Cats. It's a multi-camera technique, so there's loads of cameras around the set, so the stage, where the comedians are sat playing the game of 8 out of 10 Cats. So it's an audience feel. It's usually used for comedy TV shows, like live TV game shows like this. So that's an example of what multi-camera technique is used in. The negatives of multi-camera technique is it takes longer to set up due to a large amount of equipment that they're using. Positives and negatives of single camera technique. Positives are it can sometimes be cheaper than multi-camera. It depends on what the actual budget of the film is or the drama series. Single camera technique is a lot easier for the director to use because he's only using one camera. It can concentrate on different shots at different times. With multi-camera technique, you'd have to look at all the different types of cameras and look at all the different angles. With single camera technique, it can just focus on one camera. The disadvantages of single camera technique is you're only focusing on one angle at one time, so that'll make it a lot harder to do because the actors will have to get into the same positions that they were before in the first shot. This means it takes a lot more time to make, and a lot of time in the editing room as well. Here are some different genres that single camera technique might be used in. We have sitcoms like The Office, Malcolm in the Middle, Scrubs and In-Betweeners. There are crime dramas such as X-Files, Breaking Bad, NCIS. Period dramas like Downton Abbey, docudramas like Band of Brothers, The Mill, Boardwalk Empire, and also mockumentaries like Spinal Tap, The Office and Life of Rock. Here are the different types of dramas. First of all, you have a series drama, so it's non-stop, it keeps going, there's no end to it. There are seasons, and it will come to a stop one day, but it keeps going from now on. There's examples like The Walking Dead, Lost, and Game of Thrones. A serial drama is where they keep making episodes every day, so you'll be watching an episode every evening, like, for example, EastEnders and Coronation Street, one of the big ones. A one-off drama is something that might only be like one episode or maybe one season. An example for that is Dracula. Now I'm going on to the technical analysis, mainly including the edits. First we have an example of a cross-cutting edit, also known as parallel editing. The film is Silence of the Lambs, and at one point it shows the police outside and then it jumps back into the house. So what this is doing is it's parallel with the storyline. So it's parallel with Buffalo Bill and the police outside. It's very high key lighting outside for the police. Also, that can give an impression of how good they are and their authority and how safe it is outside. Inside the house where Buffalo Bill is, it's very dark, it's very low key lighting, giving that impression of evil and mystery, and it makes it very scary for the audience. Near the beginning of the scene is a close-up of Bill's eyes holding a moth. This creates an eerie feel to the situation and the character, and even in the location. There are a lot of mid-shots in this scene. The mid-shot allows the room for the hand gestures and a bit of movement. So overall, the parallel edit is two scenes happening at the same time, simultaneously, but they're actually happening at different locations. They both jump to one another, inside the house and outside the house, back to the police, so it makes it look as if they're happening at the same time, but they're actually not. They've just been edited together. Using this edit is very hard to pick out as it flows very well. The next edit is a match on action. An example from Friends. First of all, the camera shows from outside the door and then jumps into the room on the inside as he closes the door, making the shot seem fluid and masking the edit. The next edit is an eyeline match, and there's an example from Now Voyager, which was done in 1948. It first shoots to him over and over the shoulder shot from her shoulder, and then it shoots to his shoulder, looking over his shoulder, seemingly as though the audience is looking at her, and as well as her looking at him. We are involved in the conversation, and we feel the emotion of the two characters together, especially their proximity is very close. They have also kept to the 180-degree rule. This rule enables the camera to stay in one certain area between the two characters. It creates the emotion of this scene between the two. Another example of the 180-degree rule is from Pulp Fiction. It keeps within the scene and the conversation, so it keeps us between the two characters. Also, the proximity is quite far away because they're sitting on opposite sides of the table. This relation is quite tense, especially that he's pointing the gun towards him. And in this scene there are also many over-the-shoulder shots, seemingly as though the audience is actually the character looking at the other person in the shot. As well, it feels like we're talking to them. It keeps the audience involved within the scene. The next edit is split screen. There's an example from Kill Bill where two shots are happening at the same time in the same screen space. So what this does is it tells us that two things are happening at the same time within the scene. And although these shots have been taken at a different time, to the audience they simultaneously look as though they are happening at the same time. The edit is unnoticed. The next edit is a montage. It's loads of scenes put together which seem to be happening in order. It's very fast moving, and there's an example from Hot Fuzz. It's at the opening scene. So everything seems to be happening as though it's from A to Z, so from beginning till end. It's usually used for someone telling a story about their life. Now we're going to narrative structures. The first one is linear. It's a chronological film from start to finish. An example of linear is Skyfall. It contains no flashbacks and is in order from start till finish. It starts off with James Bond trying to stop an unknown organisation who are infiltrating all the undercover agents around the world. Bond gets shot by one of his team members, then presumed dead, but turned out to be alive. MI6 is attacked and Bond travels with M to his old home, Skyfall. The house is destroyed by the organisation, but Bond manages to kill Silver, who is the leader. Non-linear can have flashbacks in. Pulp Fiction is a very good example of this. It's not from A to Z, so it's not from start to finish. It's very jumbled up and scenes are happening at different times within the film. Although it's non-linear, it's easy for the audience to piece together all the pieces, like a puzzle. It's not too confusing for the audience to watch. The next one is realist. So a realist movie would be something that's likely to happen every day, like a crime drama, like NCIS. This is realistic and follows in the eyes of NCIS. This is more relatable because they are crimes that are more likely to happen in real life, and people watching find it interesting to watch something that actually does happen in real life. An anti-realist is something surreal that's very unlikely to happen, like a sci-fi movie. An example would be the drama series The Walking Dead, which is based in an apocalyptic world with zombies following a group of survivors. This opens up people's imaginations and takes people out of the real world that we already know. Now I've got types of endings. The first one is an open ending. Open endings are a great way to get the audience to think about what could happen next in the film, and whether there could be a sequel. It gets people to question whether there could be actually another story to it. An example from Inception, the ending scene, where a spinning top is left on the table. It leaves us to believe whether Leonardo DiCaprio is either asleep or is awake. It's left to the audience's imagination of what they decide for his fate. Closed endings. An example from Peep Show. In each episode it has a beginning, middle and an end, and each episode also follows its own separate story, not leading on to the next episode, so it closes that episode's story. Usually open endings are talked more than closed endings, because open endings leave the audience to their own imagination of what could be made more.